السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Inshallah ta'ala, for this session of Morning Light, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to talk about some of the rulings and etiquettes of the i'tikaf. Now when it comes to the i'tikaf, most of us, we're not making i'tikaf that are sitting here. Most of us, we're not making i'tikaf. But i'tikaf is something that many of the brothers that are sitting here today, they're making i'tikaf. But it's very important for all of us to understand what exactly is i'tikaf, whether we make it or not, because we have friends, we have family, we have people in the masjid, and it's something that is an act of worship, and it's something that is good to know. So inshallah ta'ala, what we're going to be reading from is the book by Al-Imam al-Shawkani, Ad-Durr al-Bahiyya. And this was a very brief book on fiqh. He's going to mention some brief points on i'tikaf, and we're going to mention some comments on those brief points as well as some proofs from what he has mentioned, inshallah ta'ala. So bismillah, he starts off the chapter, he says Babul i'tikaf, the chapter of i'tikaf. Now before we even get into i'tikaf, what does i'tikaf even mean? What is i'tikaf? Yes? Seclusion. Excellent, right? So i'tikaf in the Arabic language, it literally means to adhere to something. Right, to stick to something, right? That's what i'tikaf linguistically means. So it's very important to understand what it linguistically means, because that helps you have a deeper meaning of what it means in terms of an act of worship, right? So i'tikaf, the way that the Arabs would use the word i'tikaf, is literally to attach yourself to something, okay? So i'tikaf as an act of worship now, it has something to do with seclusion, right? So somebody give me a more specific definition of i'tikaf. When we talk about i'tikaf as an act of worship, what are we talking about? Anybody? Right? It's seclusion to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it? What else we know about i'tikaf? What else? Good. Leaving off the dunya. Excellent. You're secluding yourself, to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to leave off the dunya. What else? You do it in your house? On the street? In the masjid. Okay? So the scholars, they mentioned that i'tikaf, the meaning of i'tikaf is to cut oneself off from the dunya, from the worldly life. Right? And to stick to the masjid and to seclude oneself to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Shawkani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, yushra'u. He says that the i'tikaf, it's something that's legislated. It's something that's allowed. Imam al-Shawkani, he didn't say that it's obligatory or it's recommended. So I'm going to ask you brothers here, is i'tikaf something that you must do as a Muslim, or is it something that is recommended? It's something that's recommended, right? It's something that is recommended. Aisha radiallahu anha, hadith Bukhari and Muslim, she says, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعتكف العشر الأواخر من رمضان حتى قبضه الله ثم اعتكف أزواجه من بعده. Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would make i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. And he used to continuously do this until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his soul, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his life away. And then Aisha radiallahu anha, she herself was one of the wives of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she said that after he passed away sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his wives, they continued to do this i'tikaf. So what are some benefits that we get from this hadith? Number one, we see that the Prophet ﷺ, it was a common practice. She says, كَانَ يَعْتَكِفُ. He used to do something. And this expression, whenever it's used that he used to do something, it indicates that he would consistently do it. Also, we get a benefit from this hadith is that the general rule when it comes to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ is that they show us what is recommended to do. So anything that we find from the actions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right away, we know that that's something that we should do when it comes to an act of worship. Another benefit we get from this hadith as well is the fact that the wives of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would make i'tikaf. So is i'tikaf only for the brothers? No, it's not, right? I'tikaf is for the women as well. The wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would make the i'tikaf just as he would do sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now when it comes to the specific ruling of i'tikaf, we said that it's something that's recommended. Imam al-Qurtubi, the famous mufassir, he says, وَأَجْمَعَ الْعُلَمَاءُ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِوَاجِبٍ. Al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that the scholars have no difference of opinion. All of the scholars in Islamic history, they have no difference of opinion, and they're all in agreement that i'tikaf is recommended and it's not obligatory. right? So you should never feel as if i'tikaf is something that you must do and you have to do as a Muslim. It's something that is a recommended act of worship, right? Just like praying your sunnah prayers or using the miswak, things that are recommended but they're not obligatory. So the thing is, brothers and sisters, is that from these things that we've mentioned, you understand that i'tikaf is secluding yourself in the masjid to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would do it during the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now, Imam Ash-Shawkani, he continues, he says, يُشْرَعْ وَيَصِحُ فِي كُلِّ وَقْتٍ. He says that it's legislated and it's valid in every time. So Imam Ash-Shawkani, he's saying that i'tikaf is valid in all times, not just Ramadan. It's also allowed outside of Ramadan as well. And there's a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha. She says, اعتكف في العشر الأول من شوال. She says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made i'tikaf in the first 10 days of Shawwal. The first 10 days of Shawwal. Shawwal is the month that comes before Ramadan or after? After Ramadan. So that's not even in Ramadan, but the Prophet ﷺ would make i'tikaf in Shawwal. So this proves, as the scholars have mentioned, that i'tikaf is valid whatever time during the year that you want to do it. And then Imam Ash-Shawkani, he says, فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ يُشْرَعُ وَيَصِحُ فِي كُلِّ وَقْتٍ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. I'tikaf should be done in the masajid. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah mentions i'tikaf in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he speaks about i'tikaf in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla, he says, and do not approach your wives, right? Don't be intimate with your wives, right? Do not have sexual relations with your wives while you are making i'tikaf in the masjid. وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. When you are secluded and when you are clinging and adhering to the masajid. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he specifically specified i'tikaf with the masajid. Okay, so this is why from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is that you make i'tikaf in the masjid, in the masajid. Then Imam Ash-Shawkani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَهُوَ فِي رَمَضَانَ آكَدٍ. And it's even more emphasized in Ramadan. So remember, he said that you could make i'tikaf throughout the year, but it's highly emphasized in Ramadan. So Ramadan is the best time for i'tikaf. For the most part, the Prophet ﷺ would be making i'tikaf in Ramadan while he would be fasting. And then he continues to say, سِيَّمَا فِي الْعَشْرِ الْأَوَاخِرِ مِنْ. And it's even more recommended to do it in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now brothers and sisters, we are in the last 10 days of Ramadan right now. We only have a few more days left until the end of Ramadan. So this applies to the time that we are in right now. Now when it comes to the last 10 days of Ramadan, the scholars, they mention many wisdoms as to why the Prophet ﷺ, why he would seclude himself in the masjid during these last 10 days. What do you guys think? Why do you think he would do it in the last 10 days? Good, for Laylatul Qadr. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us to look for Laylatul Qadr in the last 10 nights. In the last 10 nights. We don't know exactly when it's going to be, but the Prophet ﷺ, he would seclude himself in the masjid, making i'tikaf, devoting himself to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said i'tikaf, brothers and sisters, is when you devote yourself to Allah in the masjid. You devote yourself to acts of worship in the masjid. Don't think that i'tikaf is a sleepover. You know, a lot of times some brothers, they think i'tikaf is a sleepover. So whatever they do outside, whatever they do at home, they bring it in the masjid. Right? Whether it's playing, joking, games, a little bit is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You know, some brothers might say something funny, something funny might happen, you know what I'm saying? Somebody might come up to you and talk to you, but that's not what i'tikaf is about. I'tikaf is about, you know, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. And that is something that should carry out throughout the year. I can tell you from personal experience, wallahi, that my experiences making i'tikaf in the past, they've really helped me develop habits that carry on throughout after Ramadan. Right? So it's no coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ would do this. And I'm going to give you guys a funny story. You know, like I said, i'tikaf is not a sleepover, right? I mean, when I was a lot younger, that's how I used to look at it, right? So I used to have some friends in the masjid, and you know, like we would plan to make i'tikaf during the last 10 days of Ramadan. 2 days would pass by. All we found that we did was that we just talked about stuff. I mean, alhamdulillah, permissible stuff, right? Right? But we just talked about life, talked about stuff, talk about, you know, funny things and stuff like that. You know, like how the young guys, the young brothers, they'll be discussing things like that, right? So after a few days of of the last 10 days, we're like, you know what? I'm gonna take this spot in the masjid, you take that spot, the other one, he's gonna take the other spot, and we're not gonna talk to each other. So what ends up happening is by Salatul Dhuhr, we're all like almost outside of the masjid talking. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how that happened. I'm in my corner, trying to read my Quran. This one, he's over there, I can't even see him, he's in his other little room or corner. You gotta go to the bathroom, you pass by, you give him salams. One salam turns into, how's everything? Oh, how's your Quran doing? Then all of a sudden we're talking, the brother, he gets distracted. He comes over, he's like, can you brothers keep it down? And then we ask him something, and then you guys know the rest. So the thing is, i'tikaf is something you gotta try your best to try to seclude yourself and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. Think of it as like a training for you that's gonna carry out throughout the rest of the year, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, so we're going to mention that, right? He says that it is highly recommended in the last 10 days. And we said the wisdom is to look for Laylatul Qadr. We're going to get to that point, inshallah ta'ala. And we mentioned the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he would continuously doing it. He would continuously do it in the last 10 days for the Ramadans that he witnessed, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now the brother, he said, you have to do all 10 days. Now scholars, they have difference of opinion, right? What is the minimum amount that you must do for i'tikaf, right? Is i'tikaf like I could just do whatever I want? I could do i'tikaf for 5 minutes. I could do i'tikaf for an hour. Can I do i'tikaf for 2 days, 3 days? Do I have to do the whole 10 days? So the scholars, they have a difference of opinion. But the majority of scholars, such as Abu Hanifa, Ash-Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad, the majority of scholars say that there's no minimum amount of i'tikaf. There's no minimum amount. Right? And you have other scholars like the Maliki scholars, they say that, you know what, the minimum amount for i'tikaf is a day or night. But like I said, the vast majority of scholars, they say that there's no limit. There's there's nothing that has been narrated to us from the Prophet ﷺ that specifies any limit. Right? There's no verse in the Quran that tells us that, you know what, if you want to do i'tikaf, you got to do it for X amount of days, X amount of nights. No, there's nothing like this. So because of that, the majority of scholars, they said that, you know what, if a person just comes in the masjid, they want to make i'tikaf for an hour. They want to make i'tikaf for a night. They want to make i'tikaf for a morning. Right? You come in the masjid for Salatul Fajr and you want to stay until Salatul Dhuhr. Right? So they say it all goes back to the personal preference of the person. And Imam al-Nawawi, he says, وَأَمَّا أَقَلُّ الْإِعْتِكَافِ فَالصَّحِيحُ الَّذِي قَطَعَ بِهِ الْجُمْهُورُ أنه يشترط لبث في المسجد. Imam al-Nawawi, he says that the majority of scholars, they say that the minimum of what is considered staying in the masjid, this is what i'tikaf is. Whatever is considered staying in the masjid, then this is what i'tikaf is. And he continues, and he says, وَأَنَّهُ يَجُوزُ الْكَثِيرُ مِنْهُ وَالْقَلِيلُ. And he says, if you want to do a lot of time in i'tikaf, you want to do 10 days, you want to do 5 days, you want to do 4 days, he says that's fine. And you want to do a little bit, you want to do an hour, 2 hours, you're working, right? You want to stay over at the masjid for the night, you want to stay for 3 hours, it's perfectly fine. And he says, حَتَّى سَاعَةٍ أَوْ لَحْظَةٍ. You want to do it for a moment, or you want to do it just for an hour, it's all permissible. And Imam Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah ta'ala, the great scholar of Andalus, he says, وَالْإِعْتِكَافُ فِي لُغَةِ الْعَرَبِ الْإِقَامَةِ. He says, i'tikaf in the Arabic language means staying. Right? This is very important, right? We said i'tikaf means seclusion, right? To adhere to something. Imam Ibn Hazm, he says that i'tikaf means to stay. فَكُلُّ إِقَامَةٍ فِي مَسْجِدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. So he says, whatever is considered staying in the masjid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, بِنِيَّةِ التَّقَرُّبِ إِلَيْهِ i'tikaf. Whatever time you spend in the masjid to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is considered i'tikaf. So from this, brothers and sisters, you know that, you know what, don't think that, you know what, I am going to work, I have to work every single day. Right? I don't have time to do all the 10 days like the brothers are doing. I don't have my sleeping bag in the masjid. I don't have my PJs, right? My pajamas, I don't have that to wear. Don't worry about it, right? You want to spend 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, you have the weekend off, right? It's not going to be too much hardship on your family. Bismillah. Come to the masjid 2 days, 3 days. It doesn't have to be that long. 1 day, a night, a morning, inshallah ta'ala. So, and then it's really open. And like I said, it's an issue of difference of opinion. If you take the other opinion, okay, bismillah, there's nothing wrong with that. Many great scholars have taken that view, and if you're convinced of that, then that's what you should do. Then he says that now Imam Shawkani, he's going to talk about, and like I said, he's mentioning very brief, comments. We haven't went off on any long issues, right? He's mentioning some very brief comments. He says, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ الْإِجْتِهَادُ فِي الْعَمَلِ فِيهَا. He tells us now, what should you do while you're making i'tikaf? He says you should work hard to do as much deeds as you can during i'tikaf. Right? This is what i'tikaf is about. And I'm going to mention to you too, reciting loud. Wallahi, these couple of hadiths I'm going to mention, wallahi, is so important. Not just for those making i'tikaf, but just masjid etiquettes. So the Prophet ﷺ heard them reciting Quran loud. فَكَشَفَ السَّتْرُ. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would have like a tent that would be like specified for him in the masjid. He would have his own quarters like sectioned off. And he would have some type of curtain that would just cover him from the people. And like I said, this all goes back to that meaning that we mentioned of seclusion. Right, of being away from the dunya, being away from the people and just devoting yourself to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would hear that these companions, that they're being loud reciting Quran, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would uncover the curtain and he would come out and he would say, أَلَا إِنَّ كُلَّكُمْ مُنَاجٍ رَبَّهُ فَلَا يُؤْذِيَنَّ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would say to these companions that were reciting Quran, now think about this. They're not talking about random stuff. They're not talking about the dunya. They're reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the best speech. The best thing that could come out of your mouth is what they're reciting, but they're being loud about it. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that each and every single one of you, you're privately having a conversation with your Lord. So don't harm one another, right? Don't hurt one another. Don't try to annoy one another. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, وَلَا يَرْفَعْ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ بِالْقِرَاءِ أَوْ قَالَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. Right, Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to these companions that don't try to be louder than each other. Don't try to be louder than each other when it comes to recitation. Or Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu, the hadith mentions that the Prophet sallallahu either said this about recitation or salah. So benefit we get from this, brothers and sisters, is when you're in the masjid, not just i'tikaf, and you want to recite Quran, be considerate of others. Right? Be considerate of others, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said to these Sahaba that were reciting the Quran, don't harm one another. Right? Don't try to compete like I'm the loudest one. I have the nice I'm Abdul Basit, mashallah. Like no, try to recite with a beautiful voice, but don't do it at the expense of somebody else's comfort in the masjid. The masjid should be a place that is welcome for everybody, right? Everybody. So remember, brothers and sisters, is that the Prophet ﷺ is saying this about the Quran. What about other speech? Think about that. Right? Obviously, other types of speech have even more precedence of being, minimized. So think about this. There are brothers that are trying to sleep, especially when it comes to i'tikaf. And sometimes, it may be very difficult, right? Because you want to recite Quran and brothers are sleeping at a time that nobody else is sleeping, We have to be considerate of others. In another hadith of Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made i'tikaf wa khataba an-nas, and he gave a khutbah to the people. And he says, أَمَا إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ إِذَا قَامَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. He says that when one of you stands in salah, فَإِنَّهُ يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ. Then he's speaking to his Lord in a private conversation. Think about this, right? Like look at that whole perspective of salah. Salah is not just, you come to the masjid and you just go through the motions. No, you got to remember, salah is a private conversation, like you're speaking to Allah. You're speaking to Allah. And how can we talk to Allah? And a lot of us don't even know what we're saying. So this is encouragement that, if you're going to do anything during these last 10 days, if you're making i'tikaf, try to make it an effort to understand what you're saying in salah. Right? Try to make an effort, and that's for all of us, whether you're making i'tikaf or not. Try to understand what you're saying. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَلَا يَجْهَرْ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ بِالْقِرَاءَةِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. That don't try to read louder than each other in salah. There's so much benefits we get from these two narrations. It's not just for i'tikaf, but for Jum'ah as well. Sometimes you come to the masjid early for Jum'ah and there's some brothers trying to recite Quran, right, in the rows, right? Don't be like, oh, I'm reciting Quran, forget everybody else, this is the words of Allah. It doesn't work like that, right? Because by you reciting Quran, if that's going to lead to a harm, then it becomes haram to recite Quran loud. Think about that, right? If there's somebody that's going to be sleeping, but you want to recite Quran like, oh, I don't care, I'm going to worship Allah, I'm making i'tikaf, then by you harming that person, that recommended act of worship may be haram. Think about that. And an example of this, brothers, yes. Yeah. But you know the thing is definitely, right? Some people they get offended. It's a duty of all of us, we have to remind one another, but at the same time we have to be nice about it too. Right? Because think about it. Imagine you didn't know about this, you never heard this hadith before, right? And you're reciting loud, you think, mashallah, I want to benefit those brothers, I want them to hear the Quran as well. Right? They're trying to read the Quran, but you're like, for some reason, you're like, mashallah, Abdul Basit, and mashallah, you want to be loud, right? Listen, the thing is if you don't know about this stuff, you just start practicing Islam. I was just talking to a brother yesterday about this. Imagine somebody comes up to you and they start yelling, Akhi, astaghfirullah. What are you doing in the masjid? You're raising your voice in the masjid. People trying to sleep. Right? What is this? Right? What is your first reaction going to be? To defend yourself. Anybody, your first reaction is going to be to defend yourself. Right? You're not going to, you're going to probably be listening to what the person is saying, but you're going to feel like the person is attacking you. You got to put up your guard and try to make some excuse or something, right? But if the person comes up to you and they say, Akhi, did you hear about this hadith? Right? What do you think about this? You think it's wise to do this? And to talk the person, to speak to the person in a nice way. That's what we all want, so we should want that for others as well. Right? So we got to watch how we advise. Just because you know the haqq doesn't mean you always have to say it. Okay, yeah. Some brothers like, I know the haqq, I have to establish the truth, this is my duty, I got to say it, and whatever. Who cares what happens after that? No, it doesn't work like that. You have to be smart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah." The call to the way of your Lord with wisdom. You got to have wisdom. Okay, that's a prerequisite of giving da'wah. That's a prerequisite of calling others and advising others. You need to have wisdom. Right? You can't be doing it in a way that's foolish. So this is just a benefit that these couple of hadiths that I've mentioned, it's so amazing that they come in the context of i'tikaf. The Sahaba are making i'tikaf. So think about this. If there's brothers that are sleeping, watch your voice. Right? Be considerate of others. Right? Try not to do things, leave garbage. Try not to say things to brothers. Right? Try not to do things that's going to cause harm. Okay? And like we said, the Prophet ﷺ, he says you shouldn't even raise your voice with Quran. What about other things as well? Right? That's really the point of these hadiths. And then Imam al-Shawkani, amongst his last points, he says, and a person should وَقِيَامُ لَيَالِ الْقَدْرِ, and a person should try to reach Laylatul Qadr and try to pray Qiyam as much as possible. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, مَنْ قَامَ لَيْلَةَ الْقَدْرِ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whoever stands up on Laylatul Qadr, pray, and they pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of the previous, and they do so with iman, with belief and hope of the reward, all of the previous sins will be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we reach this night. Ameen. And as we've mentioned, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to the Sahaba to look for Laylatul Qadr during the last 10 nights and to look for it in the odd nights. Listen, brothers and sisters, the thing is, when it comes to Laylatul Qadr, the scholars have many different opinions, many different views, many different angles of looking at when the odd nights are, when Laylatul Qadr is even going to be. And some scholars say it's not just the odd nights, and they have their long, they have their proofs and their evidences and their rationales. This is not the time to get into that, but the point is, brothers and sisters, is that every night you should be trying to make an effort. Every night. Right, every night during the last 10 nights, you should be trying to, treat it as if it was, Laylatul Qadr. Treat it that way. And like we said, the Prophet ﷺ would make i'tikaf during the whole 10 nights. It's not like he would only make i'tikaf during those odd nights or, at specific times. No, just the whole 10 nights. Then he says, Imam Shawkani, he tells us what not to do now. Okay, and he only mentions one thing that you should not do during i'tikaf. He says, وَلَا يَخْرُجُ الْمُعْتَكِفُ إِلَّا لِحَاجَةٍ. Now this is where it gets important. He says that the one who is making i'tikaf, he should not leave the masjid except for a need. Okay? Now does this mean that, I'm having some cravings, I gotta buy me some stuff from the deli, iftar, what are they having? I don't even eat that food anyway. Let me go across the street. Right, this is desi food, I need Arab food. This is Arab food, I need desi food. This biryani is too spicy, let me go to a restaurant. Let me get a couple slices of pizza. If you're making i'tikaf, now brothers and sisters, these are not things that are considered valid needs. There must be a necessity. It must be a great need that if you didn't fulfill that need, there's going to be some type of harm. So for example, examples of needs like this is, for example, you have to eat. right? Like if you stay in the masjid right here, in this musalla right here, you're not getting iftar, okay? You're not getting iftar and you're not getting suhoor, okay? Maybe you might get a bottle of water between tarawih, right? Right, but besides that, your stomach is gonna be yelling at you like, bro, give me some food, right? So listen, so if you're making i'tikaf and the only place that you can eat is somewhere outside of the masjid, then you can go for that reason because you need to eat. If there's a bathroom, back in the days they used to have like the bathrooms used to be far, and it used to be like a little house looking thing, like a little room, and it used to be made of wood, or like a porta potties. We have those today, right? If there's a masjid that doesn't have any toilet but it only has a porta potty like across the street or something, and you gotta go, right? So you have to go. That's a need. You can't be like, oh, I'm gonna stay in the masjid, make i'tikaf. No, you're gonna mess things up, right? So you need to go and fulfill your need. So these are just a couple examples of things that you need to do, okay? And an example of this, right? In hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, Aisha radiallahu anha, listen to this hadith carefully. She says, "Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam." The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to. Now we said, what does this mean? He used to continuously do it. على وجه الاستمرار, right? كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يدخل علي رأسه وهو في المسجد فأرجله. Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would come to like the edge of the masjid. The Prophet, his house was pretty much like connected to the masjid. It was just a door between his house and the masjid. So what the Prophet would do is that he would go to the edge of the masjid, between his house and the masjid, and he would put his head in the doorway or the opening to his house. He would put his head there, and Aisha radiallahu anha, she would comb his hair, right? So think about that. He wouldn't even leave the masjid to comb his hair, okay? He wouldn't even leave the masjid to comb his hair, but he would just stick his head out so that his body would still be in the masjid, and she would comb his hair for him. وكان لا يدخل البيت إلا لحاجة إذا كان معتكفا. And he would only enter his house for a great need that he had, right? So like I said, brothers and sisters, this is not like, oh, they're selling ice cream outside. Oh, I gotta get me some ice cream. Chocolate, sprinkles, let me go out. If thought time, I can't eat this during the day, let me go out and let me get me some sprinkles and chocolate ice cream. It doesn't work like that. And the scholars, they mentioned that your i'tikaf would be broken. يبطل اعتكافك إذا خرجت من المسجد. Like your i'tikaf is finished if you leave from the masjid without a valid excuse. Now, when it comes to stuff like, when it comes to stuff like work or visiting a sick person, or like going to a janazah, these are things that you should want to, that you might want to do. Somebody might pass away. If you have made the niyyah to make i'tikaf for the last 10 days, you can't leave for work. You can't leave to go to a janazah. You can't go to visit a sick person. You can't go because these are not dire necessities. These are not things that you absolutely need to do. Okay, and Aisha radiallahu anha, she gives us some details about this. In the Sunnah of Abi Dawud, Aisha radiallahu anha, she says as-sunnah, that the sunnah is على المعتكف, the sunnah for the person making i'tikaf, ألا يعود مريضا, is that he should not visit a sick person. ولا يشهد جنازة, and they should not go and pray صلاة الجنازة outside of the masjid. ولا يمس امرأة ولا يباشرها, and a person who's making i'tikaf should not be intimate with his wife. A person who's making i'tikaf should not be intimate with his wife. Now think about this. In the masjid, it's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. Okay? But obviously you can't leave the masjid for that purpose. Right? Our brother, he just got married. He wants to make i'tikaf. 4 days pass by, 5 days pass by. He's like, I can't take it anymore. I got to go home. Sorry, your i'tikaf, batil. Okay? So he should not, do something that's going to lead to him engaging with his wife in a way that would lead to him having intercourse with her, right? And then he says, وَلَا يَخْرُجَ إِلَّا لِحَاجَةٍ وَلَا يَخْرُجَ لِحَاجَةٍ إِلَّا لِمَا لَا بُدَّ مِنْ. And he should not leave except for something that he absolutely has to attend to outside of the masjid. Right? In that case, if you come out for like a need, like for example, like we said, for eating or the bathroom or something like this, or you have to come out of the masjid, or for a shower, right? For a shower where some brothers, they really have to make, you have to make ghusl. You wake up, something happens, oh man, I gotta go make ghusl. And you're in i'tikaf. You stay in the masjid and you sit there? No, you have to make ghusl. So what if there's a place, there's no way that you can make ghusl except if you go to somebody's house nearby or something like that. Then you can go and you could do that. But listen, when you come out of the masjid and you're making i'tikaf for a dire need, you can't be like, oh, I'm coming out for a ghusl. Oh, the store is over there. Let me get, let me get the biryani from over there, and let me get the snacks from over here, and let me get the chocolate ice cream with the sprinkles from over. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to only leave for that purpose. You can't find like a loophole. Because remember, Allah is watching, and Allah knows about you more than you know about yourself. So when it comes to like, what about the other rooms of the masjid now? What about other rooms of the masjid? What do you guys think? Can I go, if I'm making i'tikaf, can I go to like the other rooms of the masjid? Like the library of the masjid, or the office of the masjid, or like the gym of the masjid? Can I do that? Now scholars have some difference of opinion. But inshallah, the one that's more right, inshallah ta'ala, is that as long as it's within the confinements of the masjid, it's within the gates of the masjid, and it's within the masjid compound, then it's okay, inshallah ta'ala. And this is, I have a fatwa in case you guys want to find out about this more, inshallah ta'ala, I can read it to you. But as I said, it's something that if a person goes to like the masjid library, or they go to like a masjid office, or they go to like one of these rooms in the back there, and it's still part of the enclosure of the masjid, then it's permissible, inshallah ta'ala. Right? It wouldn't be considered leaving the masjid. Some scholars mention that a person shouldn't even do that. So it's best, if you don't have any reason to go to these places, to just stick in the main musalla of the masjid. Okay? Good. So Imam Ash-Shawkani, he only mentions one thing that breaks your i'tikaf, and that's leaving. Leaving. Okay? The second thing that he did not mention, but we're going to mention, is that to be intimate with one's spouse. Right? If a person is making i'tikaf and they are intimate with their spouse, they have sexual intercourse with their spouse, then this is something that will break their i'tikaf. And many scholars, they mentioned that there's no difference of opinion about this. There's ijma' on this point that if a person is intimate with their wife while making i'tikaf, then the i'tikaf is over. Now, the point is, that, like I said, this is something highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. You're making i'tikaf, you're most likely not going to do this, okay? But what might happen is, let's say somebody, they have like a wet dream or something. Okay, they're not being intimate with their wife at all or anything. It's just them lying down and sleeping. What if a person is now, what if a person, he's laying down and he's sleeping and he wakes up and he has a wet dream, right? He's ejaculated, right? The scholars mentioned that if ejaculation is done on purpose, then it breaks your fast. If it's done on purpose, then it breaks your fast. But if it's something like somebody woke up and he just found like, oh, subhanAllah, I had a wet dream, right? And they're in a state of janaba, then they should make ghusl right away and they continue their i'tikaf. Even your fast, continue your fast, okay? Because it's not something, yes. Phone calls? Okay, so phone calls, let me just finish this last point and then we'll talk about that, inshallah. So Nawawi mentions that there's ijma' that wet dreams don't break your i'tikaf. Just go and make ghusl, okay? Just go and make ghusl. And the third, oh yes, so the brother, he asked about phone calls, right? You can make phone calls, but like I said, you want to keep just interactions with people to a minimum. It's not like talking to brothers and stuff like that breaks your i'tikaf, right? We've only mentioned that if you leave the masjid, it breaks your i'tikaf, or if you're intimate with your spouse, that breaks your i'tikaf. And the third thing that I was going to mention is menstruation. If there's a woman making i'tikaf and she starts to menstruate, then her i'tikaf is broken, okay? Because she can't pray and she can't be in the masjid according to the majority of the scholars, okay? So for a menstruating woman, she should just go home, right? Go home and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the house. Now the brother, he asked about phone calls. Now the things that we've mentioned, that's it. That's all that breaks your i'tikaf. So if you come in the masjid and you're making i'tikaf and you talk all day, it's not like your i'tikaf is invalid. But why would you do that? You've already sacrificed time off of work, right? You've already sacrificed time to be in the masjid. Don't waste it. Right? Don't waste it. We only have like a few more days left of Ramadan. If it's a phone call you have to make, then okay. Right? You have to do that. Right? You have to do what you have to do. But if it's something like, oh, you want to call this long lost friend, like, hey man, what's going on? I saw you on Facebook, and how about we meet up after Ramadan and make your Eid plans and all of this stuff, and stuff that have nothing to do with your i'tikaf, you want to avoid it. But like I said, it's not like it's haram or breaks your i'tikaf. Okay, so these are just some things that I wanted to mention and just remind myself and everybody here with, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, good. Now, very important. If you have made niyyah, okay, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, the actions are only valid and rewarded according to their intentions. So, very important, if you've made in the niyyah to make i'tikaf for the whole 10 days, and you come out and you break your i'tikaf, then that niyyah, right, whatever you've intended in that act of worship is null and void. You have to make another intention. You have to have another decision in your heart as to how long you're going to make i'tikaf for, right? So if you want to make i'tikaf for 3 hours, you don't have to say anything. Just have it in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's inside of your heart. You don't have to say anything. Just have it in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your intention. And the cool thing about this is that you could be making i'tikaf and nobody would even know. Think about that. You already have to be in the masjid, right? If you know you're going to be in the masjid for like after Asr until Taraweeh, have that intention in your heart, right? Nobody even knows, but you have that reward of i'tikaf, right? You have that whole other dimension of your acts of worship, right? So that's what you should do. Just have it in your heart that you're going to be in there for... Yeah, if you have a niyyah for 10 days and you break it, you can't just continue like that, okay? Because your original niyyah for the 10 days, you broke that. So however long you've intended, you have to stay in the masjid for that amount. So if something happened and you left now, you can come back and continue, remember, because we said that there's no minimum or maximum for i'tikaf. If somebody wants to make i'tikaf for the whole month, they can do so. Right? They want to make it for 2 weeks, and then they could do so. If something happens, you come back to the masjid, renew your intention in your heart that, you know what, I'm going to stay for the rest, inshallah. So some of the scholars, they mention, a very minor view amongst the scholars is that you should make it up. You should make it up. But there's no proof for that. Some of the scholars, they mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as I mentioned the hadith in Sahih Muslim where he made i'tikaf in Shawwal, if you read the entirety of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he actually stopped making i'tikaf in Ramadan and he postponed it to Shawwal. So some of the scholars say that if you break it, then you should make it up. But like I said, this is a minor view and it's not supported by a lot of evidence, but it's safest to do. But if you don't have the opportunity outside of Ramadan to do it, then it's no problem, inshallah. There's no expiation, you know. And like we said, it's a recommended act of worship. It's not obligatory in the first place. So you don't have to make it up. Okay, right? Because it's like a sunnah prayer. You don't have to pray your sunnah. It's highly recommended, but if somebody leaves it off, it's not as if they have to pray it, as soon as they remember. Okay? So if you don't have to make it up, inshallah. Anyone else have any other? Sure. Jazakallah khairan. I agree. No doubt, Sheikh. No doubt. I agree with you. I'm with you. Inshallah. And just branching off at that point, I'm going to tell you guys what to do to make everybody happy. If everybody does one thing, wallahi, the rest of the i'tikaf is going to be smooth. Wallahi, I swear by Allah. And that one thing is, don't worry about yourself. Think about your actions, impacting others before you think about yourself. If everybody does that, everybody's going to be happy. If everybody does it, everybody's going to be happy, right? But the minute you just focus on yourself, like, I don't care about nobody. No, you're making i'tikaf in the masjid. You're not the only one in the masjid. Like, I'm king of the hill, mashallah, I'm the big imam, Shaykh al-Islam here. Nobody cares about anybody else. No, it doesn't work like that. The other people in the masjid, they have right to make i'tikaf just like you do as well. So think about this. Just focus on stopping. Because listen, the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he swore 3 times. He said, Wallahi la yu'min. By Allah, he does not believe. By Allah, he does not believe. By Allah, he does not believe. And the Sahaba, they said, who are you talking about, O Messenger of Allah? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Man la ya'manu jaruhu bawa'iqa. The one who his neighbor is not safe from his harm. Think about this. He does not believe. He does not have true iman. And the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, none of you have true iman until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Think about others as well, inshallah. Okay? So inshallah ta'ala, and the things that we've mentioned about advising one another, right? You want to be soft, you want to establish brotherhood with the brothers, smile with the brothers. Don't be like, oh, I'm making i'tikaf, get away from me. No, be nice. Right? Smile with the brothers, right? If it's something small and like a small conversation, it's okay, inshallah. Right? Perhaps that may be an act of worship. Right? The Prophet ﷺ tells us that smiling in the face of your brother is sadaqah. And And the i'tikaf is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are all things that we can do as well. So we're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala, and let you guys go home, get some rest. And for the brothers who are making the i'tikaf, you can sleep now, inshallah. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جزاك الله خير.
You both